Well, here we are. It is, what's the date today? Today is July 23rd, 2025. And I wanted to talk about a sale that took place yesterday. As you saw in the headline, is Americanna back? Because as we all know, American antique furniture has been in the doldrums now for over 20 years. There was no market for it. It was driven largely, the lack of interest in it was driven by the interior design community and the passing of a lot of major dealers who created that market. The market makers for American furniture retired or passed away from the industry, and it just fell apart. It all just fell apart. And what seems to be happening now is that there is a revival of interest. I've talked about it in the past in different videos. We've talked about the slight shifts in prices happening, little areas where every once in a while a piece of American furniture in the last few years have been bringing pretty good prices. American decorative art, American folk art, and so forth. And just yesterday there was an interesting sale, and we did the preview here a week or so ago on the Martha Hamilton collection. And she was a very well-known collector. She was on the board of numerous museums. She was the guru at the Skinner auction house for many years, the Americanna department. She was an intense researcher. She had an impeccable eye and all that good stuff. And she passed away last year. And she left behind her own collection of things that she'd bought during her career, her long career. She was in her 90s when she died. And I was wondering how the stuff would do. I was really, really curious, and that's why I did that particular video, because these are some of the great pieces of early American folk art and some formal stuff sprinkled in that was all the rage during the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. People were buying it, collecting it, building, donating to museums and so forth, and then it just ended, as I said. And yesterday was amazing. I'm just going to put it that way, and I'm going to go through, so there's going to be sort of a highlight reel and show you what some of the prices were and talk about it, and maybe we may be looking at a resurgence of interest in this stuff because it is important. It is history. It is our American history in particular. It is as it was seen through the eyes of the people that were alive then, and this is such a fascinating thing to observe and enjoy. And I'm going to get started. We'll go through some of the prices and think about what really happened now. And keep in mind that Eldreds is a New England auction house. They are extremely familiar with the current market of American furniture. Over the decades, they've been in business for, I don't know how long they've been in business, 50, 60 years. They've handled a lot of great American furniture. They have a good reputation. They're not some, fly-by-night operation that just sprung up a few years ago. These are seasoned veteran auctioneers with enormous amounts of knowledge in the American decorative art field. That's why they were picked. I noted a couple of weeks ago they didn't pick Skinner's to handle this sale, and Skinner's would have loved to have had this sale, now owned by Bonhams. They didn't. The family didn't pick them. They picked Eldreds over Skinner's for a reason. They picked them for a reason to handle this, and the results are very reflective of what a smart choice that was, because I don't think Skinner's could do this sale anymore. All right, and this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Here you have this really neat this is a miniature putty paint decorated pine chest. It only measured 8 by 9 inches by 4 inches. That's just the chest, and it's done like a traditional New England blanket chest, but nicely grain painted, all intact. That was something Martha was very fond of. She loved intact, untouched surfaces, as all good collectors do. And it was estimated at $1,000 to $1,500, which I thought sounded pretty reasonable given the recent past, the last 20 years. That's probably about what it's worth. But in the end, it sold for way over that. It sold for basically about 6 times its high estimate. It went for $7,500 plus premium. Always got to add basically 29-30% for the premium that's get tacked onto the price, so you know what the full price was of the item. So this ended up being very close to about $10,000. So about 6-7 times its high estimate. All right, and then over to this is a stunning mirror. This is a wonderful decorated, they call these Queen Anne courting mirrors sometimes. They're not very big. This one was just 17 inches tall and 9 inches wide, fairly small. Estimated at $1,500 to $2,500, which, again, was a reasonable estimation based on most recent prices that people could look back on with any sort of confidence. Sold for $22,000 plus, so about $28,000 for this little mirror. But it's all paint decorated. Early mirror, probably done around 1720, 1730. They didn't say whether it was American or not, but I think it probably was. It was just described as a country Queen Anne mirror. And this would have been the kind of thing that you would have found in rural areas of New England during the early 1700s. Really, really great little mirror. I love the glass. The glass is all peeling and old, silvered come out. The backs are, they degrade over time. And then you have this really neat. I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I thought this was a great little miniature landscape painting. It's a little crooked in the frame. It was estimated at $500 to $1,000. It was probably a kid's picture. I suspect did this, but very interesting, very evocative American folk art, New England scene, quintessential architecture, interesting colors, mountains in the background. It looks like where I am in New Hampshire right now. Very, very similar landscapes up here. Ended up with going for $8,000 plus the premium, or about $10,500 against a $5,000 to $1,000 estimate. And then over to this, another painting we talked about a couple of weeks ago. This is another. This is probably a young schoolgirl's picture, American school, 19th century, of again a farmhouse. Children were taught to paint what they saw, and this is such a whimsical painting. This was apparently one of Martha's favorites, and I can see why. It's very folky. It's very cool. It's very interesting. I love the light, the use of light. The kid was doing sort of almost a luminous background with pink skies that became so popular during the 19th century, and this very lovely, well-kept little farmhouse and trees and so forth, and a river nearby with trees, branches and limbs floating down the river and things. It was neat pictures. $1,000 to $1,500 estimate, sold for about $4,000, a little over $4,000 with the buyer's premium. Great picture though, a really, really great little picture. And then on to this. That little whistle you might have heard was my wife trying to get Buck to come back. He was up with one of the neighbors. You may have heard some barking. Where we are right now, the dogs can just roam around up here in New Hampshire. All right, and then over to this, the very, very nice Queen Anne walnut easy chair. Now, these wing chairs were very functional and highly prized back in the day. This was done around 1735. It's got a wonderful shape to it, beautiful base, and notice the shape of it. And these were practical designs. These were meant to be sat in near a fire, and they would keep you warm. The sides were all cushioned and insulated, very comfortable, easy on the back. These were real luxury items in their day for well-to-do people. You wouldn't find a wing chair like this in the typical American home. This would have been for a wealthy farmer or a wealthy banker, or somebody with some wherewithal. But it was a very, very fine chair and beautifully upholstered. This was absolutely the correct upholstery for it. For the period, it was estimated at $3,000 to $5,000, which is right again, sort of what they've been bringing over the years. This one sold for $22,000 plus the premium, so about $29,000 for the wing chair. And then hopping along over to this, a very wonderful, this was an exceptional table, Setmor School, Boston, Mass. Either John and Thomas Setmor, of course, were Boston's two preeminent federal period furniture makers. And this was a really superb table with birch veneers, mahogany, line inlays, wonderfully turned legs tapering down to these nice little vase feet. And these turrets on the ends, lots of shaping going on. The top was still nice and flat. This one had probably been refinished in the early 19th century. It looks like an old refinish, but very, very nice surface. Beautiful grained mahogany, very clear, very, very iridescent aspect to it. Estimated at $4,000 to $6,000. It sold for about $10,000. All right, and that was a spectacular piece of furniture. And back in the day, when in the 90s, when these tables were so popular, they sold for typically, I think I even said it last week, $10,000, $15,000 was sort of the price range for them. So this is getting back up there again. And I think people are deciding they want to own nice things and things that represent something. And these of course federal furniture were very representative of the shift in taste following the Revolution, when American taste moved away from heavy Chippendale and heavy Georgian looking furniture to more refined, more elegant, straighter lines, crisper surfaces. and this is what they ended up with. And then you have this. This did very, very well. This was a profile of Gideon Vney playing with his dog. Now it was by John Davis, famous artist in the day. $4,000 to $6,000 estimate, sold for about $27,000 with the premium, $28,000. An absolutely charming scene. And these pieces have had no interest among collectors over the last few years. This was done in 1833. Wonderful example, very folky, very classic American. Love the dog. And any rate, $28,000. And then over to this, Fireboards. Now, when was the last time anybody remembers a fireboard selling for anything? These would go in front of a fireplace when it wasn't in use to block the chimney, to reduce drafts, and give you something to look at. So they would take a big piece of wood, and they would paint it like a fireplace, and it would overlay the front of the fireplace while it was not in use. And they would do this with it. And in this case, it was not uncommon in real life that during the summer, when you weren't using your fireplace, you would remove the ashes, remove the irons out, clean it, and put a vase or put some flowers in there, put something else in there as a decoration for the room. And in this case, they took to painting these boards. The sort of trompe-l'oeil faux brick deal going on, and then they would often frame it with some sort of tile arrangement. In this case, it was flowers and plants and so forth. This was a good one too. It had no damage that I could see. It's a rare bird. It was estimated at $4,000 to $6,000, which was sort of in keeping with what they've been selling for in recent years. This one sold for about $15,000, which again, you're getting back up into those expensive prices again. It was done around 1815 or 1810, somewhere in that period. But they were very popular. You do find them. And then over to this, the American School, the interior meeting scene. And this was another one we talked about a couple of weeks ago, because I thought the scene was so interesting, because it was done during the 19th century, 1830s or so. And you have these gentlemen sitting around here, and it's not just a bunch of men sitting around. These were the people that were the next generation after the Revolution that were rebuilding the country. And as you can see, they were becoming prosperous, and they were heading us in the next 40 years. We would get into the Industrial Revolution. But right here, you have probably bankers and well-to-do farmers, people interested in maybe building railroads, people doing things, people actually doing things, contributing to the building of this country. And here they all are. They're having a nice evening out. They're well-dressed. They're having some wine. There's some fruit on the table. No doubt talking about what's to come next, what their plans are, and so forth. And this is how business was done back then. This was how it was done. These guys were very representative of the kinds of people visually that did everything that a lot of the stuff that built the foundations of the things we rely on today, to this very day, 180 years later. 200 years later, here they are. All right, and this was estimated at $3,000 to $5,000. Ended up selling for that comes out to about $19,000 for this painting. I loved it. I thought it was a great picture because of what it represents and the classic interior and everything. And it was a pretty good size painting too. It was 25 by 30 inches. That's the painting size, and the overall frame size is 30 by 35. But it was a beautiful example, very, very unusual, sort of an unusual scene, because they often would just have one or two people on interiors. You often didn't get whole rooms full of people. And then this was one of the big guns of the sale, Joseph Stewart. This painting was well known. It had been it was the portrait of Samuel Tracy Coit, done in 1790, right on the end of the American Revolution, this young boy. And this painting had a fairly extensive provenance. It came down through the Coit family. It was sold by the famous Vos Gallery in Boston, which was one of the finest art galleries in the city for many, many, many years. Then it went to the Bertram and Nina Fletcher Little collection. And they were the Littles were a very interesting couple. They lived in the town where we had our gallery in Essex, Mass. And there's a book called Little by Little, and it was dispersed in the. We went to the house actually when the last of the Littles died. We were asked to come out by the caretaker actually. To go through the house, look at it, and give the caretaker some suggestions on securing it, because there were millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of folk art in this house. The Littles were wealthy, inherited wealth, and during the Depression they didn't have a job, but they had a lot of money, so they went folk art shopping. all over America in the 1930s in particular. And they bought up. They continued to buy long after, but they started in the 30s. She and her husband were sort of famous for riding around the American New England countryside, buying quirky but very elegant pieces of American folk art. They were not in demand. You could buy the stuff for next to nothing, and they had loads of money, so they just went shopping. This was something that they had owned. Not surprisingly, along with all kinds of other great things. And it went from the Fletcher Little sale. It was sold at Sotheby's in 2002. It had been sold at Sotheby's originally in '94 after they died. Then it resold at Sotheby's. And then it went to Martha Hamilton bought it at that point. And it was estimated at $100,000 to $150,000 and ended up selling for just about $250,000 with the premium. For this little painting. It measured 19, the painting size was 19 by 17. So it wasn't an enormous painting. It was good size, but, just a classic New England, Connecticut, southern Massachusetts portrait. Absolutely great facial expression. Love the eyes, the symmetry of the painting, the way the buildings are placed, that egg yolk yellow building in the background. And then you have this latticed fence, and it's interesting because that fence you wouldn't necessarily think of that as being an 18th century style fence. It looks almost Victorian. No, they had them back then too. Bordering your land was often when they often did amazingly creative things to border properties and build beautiful fences to go around them, and stone walls, of course, here in New England. And then you had this, a beautifully painted, pine-decorated poplar wood box, probably upstate New York, where there are a lot of poplar trees. This is not a big box either, keep in mind. It was 5 by 12 inches. It was estimated at $1,000 to $2,000, ended up selling for about $10,500 with the buyer's premium. But again, this is the kind of stuff that's been languishing around in antique shops. And I will tell you that this kind of box you could probably still find out there today in some little group antique shop in the countryside, maybe priced at $400 or $500, maybe less. Because the market hasn't caught up yet, so there's some arbitrage to be had. This one sold for over $10,000. Now, it had the provenance and all that stuff, too, the Martha Hamilton, but that's it. That's the only owner mentioned here. There's no other information about where she got it or how. She probably, she bought from pickers and she bought from local auctions. And then you had this. This is, now I was very happy to see this because this is a really nice federal period, New England, probably southern New Hampshire, grain-painted two-drawer stand. And it measured 29 inches in height. And it's a very simple little table with a shaped top, very classic country furniture, very clean lines. Unusual in that it has a split top drawer. That you don't see often. Usually it's a single drawer, but nicely tapered legs, these square sort of Hepplewhite legs and so forth, and estimated at $1,000 to $1,500, and it went for just a little over about $9,500. That's a very good price for one of these because in recent past we've seen auctions of tables like this to go through, and they bring literally $175, $200. And the price results we're looking at here are, I think, a pretty good guide on things you want to look out for. And I would urge you, if you're interested in learning more about American furniture, go through these results and look at the prices. There were some firkins and boxes, some odds and ends, things that just haven't had any interest, not because they lack quality, not because they're not interesting historically, not because they don't mean something. It's just that Americans' attentions got focused away. We had 9/11. We've had all that stuff going on, and frankly, the people that used to push and promote and advocate for the preservation of antiques has waned, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy because you don't want to forget your own culture. All right, and then over to this, the next big sale thing, the second most expensive lot of the day was this, attributed to Dupuy, also known as the Guilford Limner, Kentucky, dated around 1820, portrait of Mr. and Mrs. James. And this is a very elegant little picture. And it was estimated at $20,000 to $30,000, but it went way over that, selling for about $115,000. Notice the stares, the facial expressions. That egg yolk yellow. Yellow was a very popular color back then. They loved to use yellow as the accent in portraits. and his wife's sitting there. She's got her sewing needles, and they're sitting outside on a sunny day. Unfortunately, the artists often they don't depict people the way they do today, smiling and so forth. They almost look like they're terrified, which I think is part of the charm of it. And beautifully dressed. So these were prosperous people, obviously. They've got an urn with ferns coming out of it, and this little path with there's a gate in the background and so forth. Charming picture, great old frame. Sold for, as I said, about $114,000, way over the high estimate. And there is some. This also came from the Little collection again, and it was bought by Martha. It had been through Sotheby's twice, and it was bought in 1958 from Clark Bailey, Newbury, Massachusetts. Newbury is probably 15-minute drive north up near Newbury. It's right next to Newbury. Is right next to Newburyport, which is just north of by a couple of towns from where the Littles lived. This is where they picked. They would hit around these little hole-in-the-wall antique shops. And I will bet you in 1958 they probably paid around $20 or $30 for this picture. That shows you how much things changed. And then over to this, the last thing we'll talk about is this wonderful, I talked about this a lot because I thought it was such a great little table. Queen Anne tiger maple drop leaf table, but the surface on it was untouched. This was a completely, I suspect this was a completely original table. Maybe somebody oiled it periodically just to keep the wood moist. But beautiful tiger figuring in the wood, lots of wear showing, all that good stuff. Here it is, beautifully done legs. There's the bottom, all intact. This is what you want to see. Clean, no replacement wood, no nothing. Just a good, clean New England table. And on the bottom, you can really see the tigering quite well all the way around. This was a very, very good table. It looks like it might have had the hinges might have been replaced at one point. I see shadows of old hinges. Replaced hinges on drop leaves were very common because they would, at some point it was inevitable that somebody would either let the tabletop down too hard or not put the brace up quite right. Something gets put on and it bends it, and the hinges pull out. And so it's not a big sin for these tables. The big thing is it's nice if they have the completely original hinges, but the most important thing is that the wood is original. The glue blocks are original. You don't have any replaced legs, which was fairly common. The legs haven't been mended and pieced back together or anything like that. These little delicate legs, because they often did get they often did get damaged, and then they would have to end out the leg or build a new leg for it completely. But this was quite an example. It was estimated at $1,500 to $2,500 and ended up going for 10 times its high estimate, or more than 10 times its high estimate, $21,000 plus the premium, so around $26,000 or so dollars. But it was a great little table, and I thought it would do well. I was hoping it would do well because it's the kind of thing that's just sort of that quintessential, elegant country Queen Anne furniture made from beautiful woods. And this could have been used in a city house too, of course. But these little Queen Anne drop leaves were so popular because they folded up, they were convenient, they were good looking, and they had a very nice style to them. So, at any rate, it was a very interesting auction overall, and I would urge you, if you want to learn more about this stuff, go over to the results here, and you're going to see some terrific example, great hook trucks. No, not everything went through the roof, but everything overall did very, very well. I think the bargain of the day, if you want to know if there were any great bargains, I'll show you I think by far the biggest bargain of the day was this sofa. And I think the thing that held it back is that the sofas and seating furniture like this, big sofas, are sort of are sometimes the last thing to really gain a lot of traction in collecting antiques. Case pieces do, but upholstered furniture, other than wing chairs, which are very iconic. This was a Federal period sofa, probably the North Shore, either Salem or maybe could have been made up as far as north as Portsmouth, New Hampshire. This was a superb couch, absolutely superb. Tastefully decorated. The upholstery, the upholstery is absolutely perfect for it. This, and remember the wing chair, how it was upholstered. This was the style of the period. These beautiful, beautiful mahogany and flame birch veneers framing it. Beautifully done arms. And look at the price. This was a bargain. This was the one, I think, one of the big bargains of the day. It was estimated at $2,000 to $3,000, ended up selling for $1,100 plus the premium, around $1,400, $1,500. And this was all bench made, custom made, and a good size sofa too. This wasn't very, very small. It was 6 feet long. 77 inches long, so you could take a nap on this couch. This is a pretty good couch. It was bought at Christie's originally, and then was put in here. It measured 77 inches long, 24 inches deep. But go to a good furniture store and try to buy that couch bench made for under $7,000 or $8,000. You won't be able to do it. This was an absolute steal. This was the one bargain in the wholesale. No, there were some decent buys, but I thought this was a particularly good buy. If you live nearby, you live near Cape Cod. Also, shipping these is kind of expensive because of the size, and it intimidates people. They don't want to do it. So that's one of the things that held it back. Other things sold within their estimated ranges. It's true, they did, but a lot of them went way over. Here's another a Davis that was estimated at 8 to 12, went for 17,000. No, here's a Davis that was estimated at 5 to 10 and went for 3,200. And that's largely because it was rather faded. I think that held the price back on it quite a bit. But in general, all these pieces did very, very, very well. I think this was also a very good buy. This unique federal maple inlaid two-tier bureau that we talked about. And it was estimated at 5 to 10,000, which I thought was perfectly reasonable. And it ended up selling for about 3,800 with the premium. And it may be because, again, comps. People look for comparable examples that have been on the market over the years. This is a unique form. So nobody knows what they're worth. And that's always the problem. If you have something that's very unique or one of a kind and stylistically very different than other things, sometimes it's a trap. And you can say, well, it's rare. It's rare, but how do I know what it's worth? And I think that's why this brought a very reasonable price. I think it was a steal. You have to buy with your gut. You have to buy with your gut. Chase good things with your gut. And I guarantee you down the road you'll be happy. But you just don't hesitate. You just have to have it and you buy it. And I think this was an absolutely great buy. Whoever got it, bless you, because you're gonna enjoy this, and you're never gonna see another one. You're gonna have as far as I know, you've got the only one of done in this manner, and I think it's very interestingly done and very clever. Sort of quintessential, New England creativity, and it done again during the middle latter part of the federal period, 1820. But I like it very much. I like that a lot. And again, it's not about the money. It's about the form, style, and so forth. Don't always focus on the money. The money is not the important part. The beauty of the object, the inherent quality of the object is what you want to look for. And generally speaking, if something is beautifully done and in good condition and is an exemplary of its type for the period, you never lose. You never lose. But at any rate, this was a nice thing. And the whole rest of the sale was very good too. And they've got a sale today going on. They've got the Sing collection of China trade wares and so forth. And we'll come back and look at that because that's a mix of China trade and other things. But I wanted to focus on this just because it's such it could be such an interesting indicator of what's going on in the market right now, and in the antique market. And hopefully it's maybe the start of a little appreciation for fine, interesting American folk art and formal furniture from the 18th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century. I hope it is. All right, that's it for this. This was just a quick one. I wanted to let everybody sort of bring you up to date on what happened with this sale because it's important. And I'm very, very pleased, and congratulations to Eldreds. They did a really good job with this. And from what I saw of the sale that's going on today, they did a good job with that one too. They're pros. So what can I tell you? All right. Have a good week, and we'll be back on Friday with the weekly video, the Asian art market. There's some things that are going on, and I hope you're all enjoying the summer. We're up here in New Hampshire having a wonderful time for a few days. Got to get away, had to go to a 90-year-old friend's birthday and family functions and things up here, and sightseeing plane going by. All right. Well, we're near Mount Washington. It's right up the street. So here we are. All right. Have a great day, and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. All right. Bye-bye.